you're willing to die for it. But are you willing to live for it? Are you willing to prosper? Are you willing to live for something that is bigger than you? Let's get into it. You know, it's so easy to die for a cause, but it's never that easy to live for one, to really see it through. And you know, I think there's a greater purpose in that. You know, we've seen all these wars that have, you know, almost amounted to nothing. I don't know where you guys are from that are watching this, but me, I'm from America, and we have the war in the Middle East, and people have died for it. They died for a cause that they believed in. But what happens if they were able to live for it? And I don't mean just by chance, but I mean by choice. They had a choice of a cause that they can live for. You know, I don't believe the war in Afghanistan, the war in the Middle East, the global war on terrorism, whatever, was all bad, but there was quite a lot of bad to it. You know, let's just be honest here. You know, I don't think that was a cause that, you know, you really could live for. You know, and like you see, not only the soldiers that we lost in the Middle East, but you also see the soldiers that come back and that try to live for that cause that they've seen so many others die for. And because they died for it, they believe that this cause has so much more meaning than just history on a piece of paper, than just something taught in history class. And then in reality, they eventually see the fruits of their labor. They see what they reaped from what they sowed. And I think that's why, maybe a hot take, but I think that's why a lot of them do end up committing suicide, do end up, you know, not being able to find a higher purpose, because they believed with all their heart. They had to believe. That's how they survived. You know, and I know not everyone likes the soldiers that serve this country because of that incident, but I do have a lot of empathy for the soldiers. You know, and I do have a lot of respect for them as well, and a lot of understanding, you know, because eventually, and I've heard this quote countless times from various individuals that came back from the war in Afghanistan specifically. And they say, you know, I went in because it was a cause that I believed in. And then I left with just fighting for the soldier next to me, fighting for survival for the soldier next to me. You know, because at the end of the day, when you go into the military, you're government property. You know, so you kind of have to understand it from that perspective, is that, yeah, you know, they did kill people. Maybe they even killed some innocent people. The majority of them were fighting for the guy next to them. The majority of them were fighting for their brother in arms. The majority of them were fighting for their comrades next to them, just so that they can come home to their families. I think that's a huge reason why a lot of them couldn't even live with that. You know, I do believe the ones that do end up surviving, when they come out of the military with all that PTSD, are the ones that do find a purpose that they can live for, not just one that they can die for, but one that they can live for. You know, that's what the military teaches. From my perspective and from what I believe, the military teaches to die for a cause. But they don't teach you how to live for a cause. They don't teach you how to live for something that's bigger than you. They only teach you to die for something that you think is bigger than you, for something that you might not even see the fruits of your own labor. And if you do, it's not guaranteed to be a good outcome. It's not guaranteed to be what you actually believe in, because what you actually believed in is what you heard. What you actually believed in is what you saw on TV. And I think that's what it means to live for something. To live for something is to see the fruits of your own labor, to really die for something that is not only bigger than you, but bigger than your desires. You know, bigger than your pride of looking like this, you know, this soldier coming back home that has all these cool war stories or whatever it is. You know, I'm just trying to understand the perspectives here. I'm kind of reiterating myself here when I say this, but that's what a lot of people are missing. Not only soldiers, like I'm using soldiers because I believe that's a great example to use. I believe that's a phenomenal example to use for this line of thinking, to learn to live for something. I think that's a lot of maybe vets can take this, maybe a little bit of food for thought, to where they can take this and learn to live for something rather than to learn to to die for something, because their life is so much more valuable than just that. Their life is so much more valuable than just a number on a screen, than just being a soldier who's just like everyone else. You know, our veterans, their lives are so much more valuable than to die for a cause in the Middle East that they might not even see the outcome for. And if they do, is it going to be positive? Is it going to be a positive outcome? But rather that, you know, our veterans can live for something that's bigger than them, that's bigger than themselves, that's bigger than their desires. You know, and a lot of people will preach self-love. I think self-love is a massive deception of this, because, you know, a lot of soldiers, you know, a lot of our military personnel, they learned this very early on, that, you know, it's not always about them. As a matter of fact, most of the time, it's not about them. You know, they're kind of get this drilled into their head. And I don't believe self-love is going to fix this issue. I believe it'll be a temporary band-aid. I believe it'll be a temporary mask for this issue. But I believe in reality, it can't just be self-love. I think self-love has to be a byproduct of their purpose, of a purpose for our military veterans. And now I want to get into specific examples of maybe just the average individual, not so much an extreme example with our military veterans, but maybe someone that lacks purpose, or maybe even something a little bit more extreme. They suffer with mental health. They suffer with suicidal thoughts, suicide ideation. You know, I think that's why mental health is such a big problem in this country right now. It's because everyone's looking for a purpose to live for. You know, we're always pushed about these purposes to die for, whether or not the big people upstairs, I don't mean like God, I mean the rulers in dark places. You know, we're being pushed these doomer narratives to where we are made to think that we have to die for a cause, that everything's so hopeless that at the very least you can try and set a legacy to die for something. But I believe that there is something to live for, and I want to get into that. Whatever it is, you know, maybe you can live for your community. Maybe you can live for the fact that you want to find unconditional love, and you're on the pursuit of that, something that is bigger than you, not only bigger than you, but something that you can live for, something that's not so trapped in vices, something that's not so trapped in self-desires, but something that's ingrained in in servitude. You know, I think that right there is something that you can live for, something that you don't have to feel like you have to die for, something that something that you don't have to feel like you have to live every moment to its last. You know, because I know a lot of people in my generation, they kind of have this mentality that, you know, it is what it is. And, you know, I understand that. But where does that take you? You know, where does that mentality take you at the end of the day? Does it take you to something that's something that you can live for, or something that you can die for? Something that you can see the fruits of your labor? You know, and I know not everyone can live for a cause. Some people die too early, but the try is everything. It's all about the try. I don't think, this is why I'm harping on it so much about my generation, you know, and maybe even the boomer generation, because I know Gen Z and the boomers have the highest suicide rates out of any generation, I think almost history, or at least known history, right? That it's so easy to get trapped in this doomer mindset because it feels good. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, I can't really control the outcomes, so I'm just gonna let the world pass by me. And I think that's how you get a lot of people that are suicidal, because in reality, people do want to live for something. People want to live for something, okay? Instead of being trapped in your vices, instead of being trapped in alcohol, partying, chasing adrenaline, chasing more drama-filled moments, as I know a lot of females do, but I just want to talk about it. But to chase something that is like for example, instead of chasing, you know, maybe instead of chasing, like I'll use myself for example. I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm just using that as an example to maybe help others understand. You know, instead of chasing to be the best bodybuilder, the best power lifter, the best CrossFit athlete, the best self person, instead of chasing that, chase a garden that you can grow and attend to daily, something that you can learn to live for. You know, maybe chase building a community, maybe chase building a gym, maybe chase building this community, maybe chase being a part of something that's just bigger than yourself, something that you truly can live for. You You know, and this is why I'm harping on social media so much, especially Instagram, that is so self-centered to what you want, to what you believe in. Maybe instead of focusing on yourself, I know it's so hard for a lot of people because focusing on themselves is what got them out of a certain rut in the first place. But they get out of a rut to go to another rut, and then they wonder why they can't get out of that rut. It's because they're living for, it's because they're trying to die for something. They're trying to die for a cause that is selfish, that is self-centered, if you will. And instead of trying to die for a cause that's all about you, why don't you live for other people around you? Why don't you try and like build a family, for example? And this is why I think the community aspect is the biggest issue in our society today. It's because that's what keeps us around. That is what keeps us to be alive. That's what keeps us to live for something instead of to die for something. All right, I think that's all I want to talk about. All right, God bless.